This podcast may contain imagery or situations that may be disturbing to young viewers. Viewers' discretion advised. Hi, everybody. So we are back for another episode of Ghost Experience. So some of you down in the comment section on some of the other videos were kind of wondering, what exactly is Ghost Experience about? So on Ghost Experience, we talk about our paranormal activities and experiences, nor do we do any type of ghost investigation as of yet. However, I happen to have the very, very first guest here in the actual studio that me and Daniel and those associated have been putting together. I hope that you like it. But other than that, our very, very first guest within the studio is going to be basically my mother. Say hello, Mom.
Hello.
So my mom and I are going to be talking about an experience that is very close to home, something that we both know quite a bit about, something that we both have experienced. But of course, we're going to have some casual conversation. Here in a couple of minutes, I will be also talking to you guys and answering some of your questions after we did Malachi's birthday cake as a special episode of Tasty Thursdays and as an episode with Amanda Sullivan, which is What Really Happened podcast. So I will ask those questions here in a little bit, so that way, my mom can answer them for you guys, and you guys can have clarity on this. But anywho, so without further ado, so Mom, you and I both have shared experiences, and this is with a family member that you, myself, my grandma, your mom, and your dad, my grandpa, as well as your sister, my aunt, and cousin, which is your niece. We have all kind of experienced things from Colorado to Oklahoma. And this is with an individual named Dwayne.
Yes.
So Dwayne is your brother.
Yes.
And I think that I've made mention of him in Grandparents' Murder Home, which is an episode that both me and Daniel did. So Dwayne passed away in 96, correct?
97.
97. And so that situation is difficult in itself because there was a court case involved because he was murdered.
Yes.
Particularly with Dwayne's situation, he was an important figure as far as like family within our family.
Yes.
I was 3 years old?
3 years old at the time, yeah.
Yeah. I was 3 years old whenever he passed away, and there was a court case and everything. The individuals, I don't remember quite off the top of my head, but the individuals that committed the crime, they served.
Well, actually, one was released, never convicted.
Mm-hmm.
The other person was convicted and sent to prison, and he didn't serve his whole time. He was actually released on probation.
Jeez.
Yeah. And they basically, what happened is he was living in a house here in Tulsa with a girlfriend or girl, and she supposedly said that she had left him there at the house by himself. And these people had basically were saying that he had stolen some stuff from them, and was going to reclaim it. And they went in to the house while she was gone and proceeded to, they said that they were going in to reclaim speakers that he supposedly had. And all over supposedly stereo speakers. This was supposed to be after a trip that he had made to Texas with this girl.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came back, this girl one day just happens to disappear, these two guys show up, and the day before this happened, my brother had a habit of always calling. Mm-hmm. And the first thing he would say is, "What are you doing?"
Right.
And
which
it
is
just
something
happened.
I tend to do.
Yeah. And it just so happened to be that particular time he called, I was on the phone with a lawyer because that day before, I had saw a car wreck, and it just happened to be you were in the back seat of the car with me because you were a baby at that time. You were 3 years old. And I literally had to stop and help this person because their car had flipped. Mm-hmm. I was the only witness to the accident.
And that was on Anderson Road, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
And I literally had to tell him, "Dwayne, I can't talk right now. I have to go. I'm talking to this lawyer because, I seen a wreck." And of course, Dwayne was like, "Oh, well, what happened?"
Right.
And I'm like, "Dwayne, I can't talk right now. I have to hang up. I have to go."
Right.
The last time I talked to him was when I hung up on him. And
I don't intentionally have tissues in the studio. It's just I've been dealing with sinus issues, so this I guess
it just happened.
It just happens.
So usually he'll call back.
And he didn't.
Usually he'll call back, and I got off the phone. And of course, I didn't know where he was calling from. At that time, it was landlines.
Right.
We didn't particularly have cell phones. That was in 97. Mm-hmm. So no caller ID, no nothing. He would just randomly call from payphones, other people's houses,
Right.
Needless to say, that night, me and my mom both had dreams about him. Just random stuff. Like, it was just weird because we were like, it's weird for him not to call.
Right.
Couple of days later, it was like you could smell certain things throughout the house, like oil, cigarettes.
Yeah.
Marlboro Red 100s. Because he smoked.
Yeah.
And he, and he was always working on vehicles, always cars.
Yeah.
Something with the car, something automotive, motorcycles, you name it, he worked on it.
Yeah.
And it was just strange because he hadn't called in a couple of days.
Yeah, I remember you had said something about you were at work.
Yeah. I had went to work, and the only thing they found on him was a phone number and an address. And the phone number that they had found was your great-grandmother's.
Yeah.
Which is my mom's mother.
Yeah.
And your aunts at that time, Brenda and Patty.
Which, I mean...
They have passed away since then.
Yeah, which the walking cane that's behind me as well as behind you, including the carry-o.
Yeah, is theirs.
Which is Patty and Brenda and my great-grandma.
Yeah. When he was discovered, that's the only thing they could find was their phone number and their address.
Yeah.
So they had contacted them. Well, I remember I was at work that day and my mom calling me and telling me, do not watch the news. Because at that time I was a hairdresser.
Yeah.
We always had the TV on and we always had it on the news station. And I was like, why? I was like, why don't watch? I'm like, why? And she's like, just don't watch the news.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, well, okay. I'm like, we're busy anyways. I'm not going to be paying attention to it. So I got off the phone with her. And a few minutes later, I realized one of the customers, because we always left the remote in the waiting area for people to,
Right. And
you
this
know,
was at Ross Edwards, wasn't it?
well, it was Ultra Cuts at the time.
Yeah.
And we left the remote in the waiting area for people, and the weather was not the good weather at that time.
Well, I mean, it's Oklahoma.
It was Oklahoma. It was kind of starting to storm and stuff. So one of the people were like, hey, can I, and I wasn't really paying attention. The guy Terry, that I was working with at the time, he said, yeah, I'll go ahead. We need to check the weather anyways.
Right.
So I didn't think anything of it. I was cutting hair, and next thing I know, I hear them say there was a body discovered on North Peoria in a house, and they said the address. And I'm not thinking, and I'm like, oh, that sucks, And they say, well, the victim's name is Dwaine Akers. And I was like, what?
Yeah, no, it's a heart-stopping moment.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
And it just happened to be that the customer that I was cutting his hair was one of my regular customers.
Yeah.
And he was like, Andrew, are you okay? And I was like, he goes, you look like
you're just
white as a ghost.
Yeah.
What, are you okay? And I was just like,
oh, crap.
What? I was like, what name did they just say on the news?
Yeah.
What name did they just say? And he said, I don't know. He goes, I think they said your last name.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned around and I said, can you hold on a second? And I went over, and about that time, my manager at the time, Margaret, had just walked in. And I said, Margaret, I'm going to have to take a second. I was like, can you, and she's like, okay. And I went over and I asked the people, I was like, y'all was watching that, right?
Yeah, the news, yeah.
I was like, what name did they say? Did you happen to pick it up? And one of them said, well, I think they said Dwaine Akers, I think is what they said. And I just
lost it. Yeah.
I was like, I've got to go. And I was like, I called my mom, and my mom was like, you can't drive home. You can't drive home. And Margaret's like, what is going on, Andrew? What is going on? And I go, they literally just announced that they found my brother dead.
Yeah.
And she's like, what? And I was like, my mom called up here earlier, told me not to watch the news.
Right.
She didn't tell me anything else. She just said, don't watch the news.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, they were watching the news for the weather. And I guess apparently they didn't wait for the family all to get notified. And they just blabbed it on
the news. Yeah.
We found out later, when I finally got home and the police had told us what had happened, that after I had hung up the phone with him, on him that night, that later that night, the reason why he hadn't called or anything for the couple of days, is because the two people that they had arrested had went in that night and basically pistol whipped him.
Well, quote unquote was pistol whipping.
Yeah. And shot him in the back of the head. The gun supposedly went off.
Yeah. And
didn't they say he had laid there, they said, for unknown hours.
Yeah.
Alive.
Mm-hmm.
But he supposedly, the coroner said that he didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
But they said that the girl never showed back up at the
Mm-hmm.
house. She disappeared.
Of course she did.
She was nowhere to be found.
Yep.
After that, me and my mom sat down, started kind of talking, and started realizing that that night, before we all knew, we had both been having dreams about him. And we both had literally been smelling cigarettes. And my mom had even accused me of smoking at that time. And at that time, I really didn't smoke. I was kind of like a social smoker.
Yeah.
If I went out,
Yeah.
if I was drinking, I smoked. But other than that, I didn't smoke.
Right.
And I was like, no, Mom, I haven't been smoking
Well,
and or
and
anything.
you
I was like,
mentioned so something about dreams, right? Is
one of
what it wasn't great grandma. It wasn't it grandma's grandma and everything said something about she went dancing with Dwayne.
no, it was your grandpa's mom.
Yeah, said that they went
She,
dancing with Dwayne in their sleep.
yeah,
Yeah.
when we had found out about it, my Aunt Sherry, your great Aunt
Yeah.
Sherry, in Indiana, which was my grandma, your grandpa's mom. She had dementia and she was in the hospital. She was in a nursing home. She went to go visit her.
Mm-hmm.
And we really hadn't told anybody in Indiana yet, except for a few people. And she went to go see her. And we weren't going to tell her because she, didn't need to
Yeah,
know.
she
She
didn't need to know.
wouldn't
Yeah.
remember anyways. So she went in, and my Aunt Sherry sat down. And she goes, well, guess who I went dancing with last night? And my Aunt Sherry, of course, goes, well, who'd you go dancing with, Mama? And she goes, I went dancing with Dwayne.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, you did?
Yep.
And she goes, yeah. He came, picked me up in the nicest outfit, pink shirt, button down,
Mm-hmm.
black pants, nicest cowboy boots you could find.
Classic Dwayne.
And the thing about it is she had described the outfit that he was buried in to a T.
Yep. Yep.
And not too long after that, my grandma, the one that described and said that she went dancing, she passed away.
Yep.
Like 3 months later.
Yeah. Well, I know, like, because I remember growing up, like, even knowing I was, like, what, 3 when he
Yes.
passed away, I don't have a lot of memory. I just remember recognizing that there wasn't somebody coming back, because growing up, Dwayne for me he wasn't a polarizing figure. He was an important figure because at the time my dad wasn't in my life.
Yeah.
And until, recently when, I had found him through Ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you had always said that when Dwayne would come to the house or even at the hospital the day that I was born,
Oh, yeah.
Dwayne was waiting outside of the room and he was frantically wanting to see me.
Oh, yeah.
And
He was right on it.
yeah.
He was there. He was wanting to see you. He played with you.
Yep.
Every time I turned around and everything, when he come to the house,
Yep.
it was a beeline. Nobody else mattered. Nobody else was there. It was beeline straight to you.
Well, and plus too, like sometimes he would like freak you out because he would horseplay with me and stuff, and you would be like, Dwayne, you can't do that.
Oh, he would throw you up in the air.
Yep.
He would spin you around. He would do all kinds, and I'd be like, oh my God. I'm like,
Yeah.
stop.
Well, it's literally
don't do that.
it's literally all the things that I do with my children now, and then to top it all off, too, being so young at that time, and then growing up and not realizing that there were certain things that I was doing that only Dwayne would do. Like example,
Oh, yeah.
my grandma would have sweet iced tea, and he would always steal it
And
And
you do the
yeah,
same
and I
thing.
do the exact same thing. Did not know this until I was a teenager that Dwayne would do that. So even at the age of 3, if I had ever witnessed him do that to my grandmother, somehow or another, I
Mhm.
picked up on that trait, not realizing that I had seen him do that. But then there was also other times too where grandma would say that at nighttime when she was asleep, she would feel like somebody would sit at the end of her bed.
Yeah.
She said that only Dwayne would ever do that.
Yeah.
Like if he got into the house or something, because, either one, he was just coming home,
Mhm.
he would come into the room and he'd sit at the end of the bed. And that's how grandma knew that Dwayne was there.
Yeah.
And even after his passing, she even experienced and said that, oh, I felt like somebody sat at the end of my bed.
Yeah.
And then, one time, like what, we were all in Colorado. It was you, me, Angie, Scott, Justin, Brittany, grandma, grandpa.
Mhm.
And there was a family photo that was taken in the living room of Angela's house.
Yes.
And I remember the whole commotion about it because we were sitting. I was in the living room doing something, and I remember Angie had called and said, "Look at that photo and tell me if you see something that's there that shouldn't be."
We were actually in the den, and I was at the computer, and we were going through photos off of the digital camera
Yeah, from Colorado.
and from Colorado, and me and Angie was sitting there, and Angie, I just happened to stopped on a picture, and I had walked away because I was gonna go get something to drink,
Yeah.
and Angie's like, Andrea,
Do you see
look
this?
at this.
Yeah.
And I was like, look at what?
Look, what is it?
And she's like, do you see what I'm seeing?
Right.
And I was like, and I kind of looked at it and I'm like, uh, that looks like somebody. She goes, you see it too, right?
Yeah,
And
because you were in Colorado at the time, weren't you?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
when I was living up
And
there.
that's when you guys
and
called grandma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were like, and we sent the picture to her, and she was kind of like, that
What?
does look like somebody standing there.
Yeah.
And we blew the picture up and looked at it a little bit more, and we're like, oh my God, we think that's
Dwayne in
Dwayne.
the photo.
In
Yeah.
the photo, and it looked like he was standing
Mhm.
like in the window, and like he was standing there.
Yeah.
And
Which we still have this photo. I will.
I
Yeah.
was gonna bring the photo, and I forgot it, and I'll have to send it.
Well,
Or bring
that's
it.
fine because in edit I can just put it in.
Yeah.
But also too, other than that, like I mean, we have like example, like some of the artifacts that was found on him when they picked him up was a necklace that was it was a bald eagle.
Yes.
And I have that necklace.
Yeah.
And it's hanging in the bathroom where I see
Mhm.
it every single morning whenever I get up in the morning. But I've also had my experiences too because, Dwayne, he's buried at Rose Hill Cemetery. And so I go over there, which luckily enough, it's literally like right, it's like not even a block away from, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like right down the street. And so I'll ride, my motorcycle over there, or I will drive over there, whatever. And sometimes I'll take Malachi over there because Malachi's middle name is Dwayne.
Mhm.
And that obviously was intentional. Like
Yeah.
I wanted his first name to be Dwayne. I wanted to name him directly after. And I had asked Grandma and Grandpa for permission to do so. And they said that it was fine. But, other people had ideas.
Yeah.
And so his middle name ended up being Dwayne. So sometimes, I'll take Malachi or Archer over there or whatever. I'll just go over there by myself. And there was a day where me and Mandy and I, we were talking one day. Are they done? Because in my headphones, it sounded like they were in the room with us.
Yeah.
But no, so like, given like that particular day, I remember specifically sitting there, and I was in the car, and I had just went over there because what it was like, I think it was like Memorial Day,
Yeah.
and the flowers that Grandma always said that I think he was buried with yellow roses.
Yes, we
Yeah.
did a yellow thing of
Yeah.
roses on there.
So I went over there and I put a yellow rose, and I go and get a pack of Marlboro Red 100s because that's what he smoked.
Yeah.
And I would go over there and I'd bury a cigarette near his headstone, which now at this point there's probably like 30 packs of cigarettes sitting over there buried around his headstone.
Yeah.
And that's just not me. That's like the whole gist of the family.
Yeah, and and 4th of July, we would
yeah.
take into the rockets.
Bottle rockets,
Yeah,
but
the
they're
bottle
illegal.
rockets.
Yeah.
But now we
But
technically can't do that.
We do have a family
And we
member
do
that will do it anyway.
Yeah, we do have a family member that does do it.
Yeah.
And we do sparklers because that was his favorite holiday. And usually around 4th of July is when we normally have more experiences with him.
Yeah.
Because
well, and that's another thing too, is that like, so okay, not to change the subject, but like that day I was leaving the cemetery, and one of the favorite bands that Dwayne had was Queen.
yes.
And we've had two experiences of this happening. One was during 4th of July out there at the house, at Grandma's house. And then there was my experience where I was leaving the cemetery, and from my car view and everything, like, listen, I don't listen to Queen very often. It's probably like once every blue moon. It's not typically a band that I go to or a musician. But at the same time, like, I was pulling out walking away from his cemetery in the car, and from the mirror I could tell that there was a figure standing off by the gate where Dwayne's headstone is, and they were wearing a black and red plaid shirt with blue jeans. And I didn't think of it at any time until I was pulling out of the cemetery and Bohemian Rhapsody song from
Came on
the radio. And then that 4th of July, I had the 20-foot tall projection screen.
Yes. And that song,
I had it blown up in the yard, and we were watching, I think it was like Independence Day with like aliens or whatever.
Yeah.
And we had like the kids out there and stuff, and I had paused it in the middle to play just regular like music videos through the projector, so we could go and do fireworks real quick. So we had music in the background and we were doing fireworks, whatever. And I think I did like the national anthem. And now for any person that out there knows this, that whenever it comes to like the algorithm, songs don't just relate to each other. Like, I can't imagine Queen and Bohemian Rhapsody song relating to the American anthem for 4th of July.
It just literally came up out of the blue.
So like, we're in the middle doing fireworks, and we're doing the artillery shells, and all of a sudden the Bohemian Rhapsody song comes on.
Yeah.
And that just automatically for us tells us what we need to know. And you told me that you've had an experience where like at nighttime, because sometimes Dwayne would come to the house and he'd throw rocks or pebbles on your window.
Oh no, he would literally come, and if we didn't like know he was coming, and what he would do is he would come up to my window and like knock on my window. And because he didn't want to wake up my mom and dad, or and so he would knock on my window and wake me up if I was asleep, so I could come and let him in. And it was like literally about a week or two after he passed away, all of a sudden I heard knocks on the window, and I'm like,
what is going on?
I'm like, what did I just hear? I'm like, what the hell? It completely freaked me out. I was scared to death to look out the window. I literally got up, and I went and I turned the porch light on. I looked outside the curtains. Nothing was there.
Nothing.
Nobody was there.
Yeah.
I literally went back in my room, and I could literally smell oil and cigarettes. And it smelled like him.
Well, you know what's so crazy is like when me and Daniel first moved into this house after Patty's passing, we were going through like a bunch of like documents, paperwork, and stuff, and we had found from great grandma there was a newspaper clipping of Dwayne in the newspaper.
Yes.
And I had found the address of where he was murdered at.
Yeah.
And do you remember me telling you how I drove over there?
Yeah.
So I had went over there and I was sitting in front of the house, like where he was at. And I remembered I was like not parked directly in front of the property, but like
Yes.
across the street, like next to the sidewalk. And I was just sitting there and I was like looking at it. And I remember the lady, she came outside and she was just like, "Can we help you? Like,
Yeah.
you're sitting in front of like our property. Like, we understand that you're on the street, but you've been just sitting here.
Yeah.
Are you like waiting for somebody? Are you looking for something?"
Yeah.
And I remember specifically, I told her, I said, "How long have you guys lived here?" And they said, "Well, we had just bought the property less than probably about like 2 years ago." And I said, "So did they disclose any sensitive information to you or anything?" And she was like, "No, they said that it's only been lived in a few times. And that other than that, it's, it's a remodeled house, but it's the same. And I was like, interesting. And they were like, "Well, okay, so how does this relate to why you're here?" And I showed them the newspaper clipping. And I remember she was reading it. As soon as she got to that part, her mouth dropped.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Okay, so what is your name?" And I told her my full name. And she was like, "Okay, I'm going to go talk to my husband." And she tried to walk away with the newspaper clipping, and I stopped her and I was like, "I need that newspaper clipping." And she was like, "Oh, yeah, no, I'm sorry." She handed it back to me. She went inside, told her husband. Her husband came outside and was like, "Nobody has disclosed to us that anybody had died within our home."
Oh.
And just like in the episode that I did with Grandparents Murder House
Yes.
and everything, they legally have to disclose this information.
Yes.
And I told them, I said, "Well, like, yes, my uncle was murdered in your home. Yes, like this is, it's a polarizing situation.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you guys had to find out this way, but this wasn't my intention.
Yeah.
My intention was just to kind of sit here for solace and for a moment, and then I
Yeah.
was going to leave."
Yeah.
And, so out through basically your life, me growing up, etc., Dwayne has been a very, very big figure in all of our lives because we didn't all get to have a whole lot of time with him because he was 27 when he was murdered. And I remember, do you remember me telling you whenever I turned 28, I was fearful for so long that I wasn't going to make it past the age of 27.
Yeah.
Because there was so many things that I had inadvertently inherited from Dwayne, even from the age of 3 or growing up with him being around, that it almost feels like you're directly connected.
Yeah.
Mainly just because there's things that I do that only you all would have known that Dwayne would have ever done. But
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Which, it could have just been like me doing things and not realizing that.
Well, like I said, Dwayne made a beeline for you every
Yep.
time. He was like that with you. He was like that with Brittany. He
Yep.
loved kids.
Oh, I know.
Still till this day, not that we know of any,
Right.
but he would literally take the shirt off of his back for a kid.
Yep.
Like, there was a situation where there was a girl that he was with. She had a baby.
Isn't this
she had
little Zachary?
little Zachary,
that's
yes.
what I thought, yeah.
You were just about a year or two older than this baby. We actually, Dwayne had took this baby in, took care of this baby when his mother had to go to jail.
Right.
And we literally, Dwayne was doing everything to take care of this baby. And he thought the world of it. But he knew he wasn't the father.
Right.
But he did everything in his power to make sure that baby was taken care of. And if he needed to go do something, or anything like that. We took care, we babysitted and stuff. But it got to the point where it was getting to be too much. So literally at some point, he finally let us take little Zach. And then the girl's mom and everything, the other grandmother stepped in. And we were back and forth. But when Dwayne was there, he would buy baby formula. He'd buy baby clothes. He took care of that baby like it was just his.
Yep.
And
yeah, and Grandma, I don't think she swore up and down, but she believed in some way, shape, or form that she felt like that child was his.
Yes, but but the mom swore up and down that it was somebody else's.
Right.
And everything, but we'll never know until this day that if it was or not.
Right.
But I mean, Dwayne would literally, do anything for a child.
Mm-hmm.
So, but literally there was times that, yes, you were sitting off in a room, you would be playing, and all of a sudden you would be talking
to somebody.
And we're like,
who are you talking to?
Who are you talking to? And you would be like, oh, nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd be like, you sure? Because I know I just heard you having a conversation with somebody.
Yep.
And there was times that you would be putting stuff together and you were always interested in mechanical things, taking things apart, putting them back together and everything. And there's things that you did that were like, how did he figure that out?
Well, and it's like, now I did, on a Nissan Altima 1999, I changed the alternator, serpentine belt, the water pump. I've done the spark plugs on my now 2022 Hyundai Elantra. I've done oil changes and chain inspection and change pull on my motorcycle. I mean, for somebody that does make a podcast and a lot of stuff, I also work on vehicles and I drive a motorcycle. And these are things that Dwayne had in common as well.
Yeah.
And so it's the connections are all there. Which,
well, that's the thing is Dwayne, I think, has always been a part of our lives in some way or form. And that's like the only thing I'll ever regret is having you at their funeral. And I was going to take you away before they started burying him.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to because they started lowering him before I got to walk away.
Yep.
And
my thought,
you started hollering,
how's he gonna get out?
How's he gonna get out?
Well, because I remember seeing the casket, and from what I can remember, I remember like the green turf, like the fake grass.
Yeah.
And then I remember the peace lilies and the yellow roses on top of the casket. I remember the casket being like gold and red. And so, like, those were the colors that I could remember.
Yeah.
And then I remember...
It was like a dark mahogany.
Yeah. And I remember the tent, the funeral tent that we were under because it was green. And so I remember looking around at all this stuff going, what on earth? And I remember sitting there because there at one point by his grave, there was a tree that was there that they cut down.
Yeah. And that... The reason why that particular area was picked is because your great-grandmother
chose it,
chose that area.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically because of that tree.
Yep. Because
Dwayne, when he was younger, was set up here before me, your Aunt Angie, and your grandma and grandpa moved up here. And that was simply because there was some issues where we came from in Indiana that was happening. And we thought, we're going to send your grandmother at the time, thought he needs to get out of this. He needs to get out of this. He needs to get away from here.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came up here, they were living out in the country. and he would help them clean out the bushes, clean out the trees, and
Yep.
he would always like climb up in them and do stuff like that.
Yep.
And everything, and because he was older, he could take and do that stuff for them.
Mm-hmm.
And your grandmother was like, look, he's gonna like it, like by your great grandmother was like, that tree,
Yeah.
he needs shade, he needs something to be by.
Yep.
And now, a few years after he had been buried there, they went and they removed the tree.
Yep. Which is irritating.
Yeah, which is very irritating.
It's very irritating because the whole purpose of that plot being picked was because of that tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but he literally, I think Dwayne has always been around in our lives at some point in time. And I think that, you know, you have to listen to your dreams. You have to pay attention to them because...
Well, and your experiences,
because a particular dream that I have and I will never forget, I still to this day, I thought I had literally woke up and I walked into the kitchen and he was standing in the kitchen, and at that time, we had this round table that was built into the kitchen area.
I remember it.
And he was in there fixing him food.
Mm-hmm.
Literally fixing him a sandwich, getting in and out of the refrigerator, and he wasn't saying anything. And I walked in there, and I was just like, the first words out of my mouth was, "What are you doing here?
Right.
You're not supposed to be here. You're dead."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what are you doing?
Well, at one point, didn't Grandma say that because like, obviously there's like stages of grief, right? Like we know those. And I remember there were several times that Grandma had made the comments like, oh, I feel like he's like in witness protection. Or, you know,
there was a while there that we really didn't think he was dead.
Yeah.
Because your grandmother had an experience where literally she thought she was at work. And this is when she worked at, well, I can't think of the name of it now, but she was at work. She worked in their little food court thingy.
Yeah.
And she heard a laugh. And this guy was like, she turned around and she literally thought it was Dwayne.
Yeah.
And she said she literally had to take a double look, a triple look. And she literally said she had to go to the bathroom because she just broke down in tears. Because she literally thought it was Dwayne. I literally had a couple of experiences where I thought that I had even seen him. I wanted to take and see him after he passed away, like go to the corner and see him.
Yeah.
Everybody kept thinking, no, you can't handle it. You can't handle it.
Yeah, because of,
And my sister, and at that, you know, her husband.
Yeah, because it wasn't
Scott
Angie.
Went, and your great uncle Bill, and Charlie, which is another uncle, they all went and seen him. And still to this day, your Aunt Angie will say that Scott saved her from taking and seeing him.
Yeah.
Because she said that Scott, her husband, and everything said, I'm so glad you did not go in there and take and see him because you
can't unsee it.
You cannot unsee that. Because he basically said that it was not, you did not want to remember your brother that way.
Yep. And it's mostly because of how he was murdered and because of how long he had been there.
Yeah. because they said that they found him laying face forward
Yep.
on the couch, and it was just, yeah.
Yeah.
We couldn't even have an open casket because of it.
Well, my thought, I'm not going to get it.
And, that was part of the other reason why we were having our doubts, or I guess it was kind of wishful thinking.
Yeah.
Because it's like you don't see the body, you don't see them.
My thing
it's kind of like...
My thing is that, like, I understand, like, I've, like, not to toot my own horn, but, like, I've watched enough documentaries and looked at enough stuff to understand, like, decomposition.
Yeah.
And to even go into depth in that, when somebody's been deceased for even 10 hours face down, the blood pulls on that side of the face.
Yeah.
And so it's not anything that anybody wants to see.
Yeah.
It can be...
Well, see, they had to have somebody go in and actually identify
him, yeah.
And that's what they had to do to take and make sure this is,
this person.
And because he really didn't have identification per se in his wallet. He had things in his wallet that said, yes, Dwaine Akers.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like, we still need to identify him. We still need to have somebody come in and say, this is him.
So if Dwayne was still alive today, how old? He would be in his 50s now, wouldn't he?
Technically, he would be, let's see,
I think it's
52,
like
53.
50s.
He'd be 53 because 53. We're all 3 years apart.
Yeah.
And so yeah, because he was born in 69.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I believe he would. Hold on.
Well, I mean, regardless, he would.
Yeah.
He would,
I'm trying to do the math in my head.
Because Angie's in her 50s now. So she's in her 50s, and Dwayne was the oldest.
Yeah. So wait. So if that would have been the case, then Angie would be 3 years older than me. So he'd be 57.
Right. Well, okay. So we're sitting at 47.
56, 57, something like that.
We're sitting at 47 minutes and 31 seconds. So I do have a couple of questions for you if you've made it to this part of the video. So a lot of people are asking, so I mentioned in a previous video, I believe it was the grandparents' murder house. I don't know how many times I'm going to reference that video now, but I had mentioned in there about, and not to get into that kind of conversation because we could talk about that later, but I had mentioned in there that basically that Chris had passed away. A lot of people in there, because at the end of the video with Malachi making the birthday cake, I had gotten emotional because I had said how much I cared about Chris and that I was so appreciative of him. And a lot of people had remembered that. And when I had mentioned that Chris had passed away, a lot of people had sent their condolences to you. And I just haven't been able to tell you. But a lot of people had sent their condolences. And their prayers and thoughts and everything because of Chris passing away. But a lot of people understand. I think in that video too, with making Malachi's birthday cake, you had said that you would want to come back. We had said something about doing Tasty Thursdays with like puppets and doing learning and stuff and everything and blah, blah, blah. And all that stuff got paused. Dramatically. Mm-hmm. And so... but obviously there's no rush on it. But one viewer did ask, is Gigi, quote unquote, the host of Tasty Thursdays, going to make Archer's first birthday cake? Oh,
well, yeah.
Because his birthday is also your mom and my grandma's birthday.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. The 29th of July. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So.
Is Archer already going to be?
He'll be one in like a few months in July. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he'll be 9 months at the end of this month. So, yeah. And then in July, and then in August, I'll be 32.
I was getting ready to say, my dates and months are all running together right now. I'm like, it hasn't been a year already.
Right?
I'm like, hold up. I'm like,
Wait, hold up. Wait a minute. Okay,
I'm
well,
like, it hasn't been a year already. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, did we fast forward through a whole year?
pretty much.
I'm like, hold
Well,
on.
we have officially on record the longest running podcast in all of history for me. Basically, almost an hour. We are 9 minutes short of an hour. We are exactly at 50 minutes and 24 seconds. So, anyways, I hope that you guys have enjoyed this episode. I know that it's probably been a tearjerker and it's probably been a lot to digest. And obviously, this is a story that I've been meaning to kind of sit and talk with you guys about because it is a part of my life. It's part of my history. But also, I wanted to do it appropriately and do it with Mom because Mom is obviously Dwayne's brother. However,
I'm Dwayne's brother.
Sister, sorry.
I'm sorry, I couldn't let that slide.
I didn't.
I had to say something.
I didn't mean. So I am dyslexic, everybody.
I think somebody's getting tired.
It's 10:06 p.m. Like, the night's still young. It's getting going, but I'm old.
I think he's getting old, everybody.
No, Daniel hasn't told you. I found my first gray hair on top of my head.
Oh my God.
And
gray hair.
My first gray hair in my eyebrow, too.
Lord. Oh, child, you just don't know.
When you've had children.
I've had children.
Only,
where do you think you came from?
Whoa, you've only had one. I've got three.
I was smart. I stopped at one. I was smart. I stopped at one. You were enough. Remember, I had my 2-in-1 with you.
Yeah, well, listen, not all trans people are going to accept the 2-in-1 scenario, but I've had to deal with it, okay? But anyways, okay,
that's a whole nother chapter.
Now, okay, probably like later on in the future in the next episode, not for ghost experiences, but for talks with Heavenly, the one thing that I do want to talk with my mom presently is how I found my dad. And we're going to go through, oh, I know, she's over here shaking her head. I'm pretty sure you guys can see it. Anyways, so we're going to talk about that whirlwind because that story in itself has a bunch of twists and turns. Mm-hmm. To sums it up, my dad, well, he had found essentially fortune
in so many different wrong ways.
But when I finally found him, sadly, my dad had passed away last year of lung cancer. And I was lucky enough to be able to talk to him for a little bit and get to know him prior to him passing away. And then there was the big fiasco with the will and testament.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole nother story.
There's a whole nother story. And apparently I've got technically 2 biological half-siblings and 1 sibling that is a non-relation to my dad. So, and we'll get into that whole thing later on for another episode of Talks with Heavenly. It's not a ghost experience. That one has a whole lot of family drama, twists and turns, tables flying, lawyers being called.
Yeah.
Money numbers flying all over the place. The federal government getting involved.
Yeah.
But anyways, okay. Well, I hope that you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you can, please make sure to like and follow and share. You can obviously find this podcast as well as my other podcast on all different listening platforms, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, including Spotify. Other than that, for those that are here on YouTube, I hope that you guys enjoyed today's episode. Everybody saying thank you for my mom for doing this.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Anyways, I love you guys, and I will talk to you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.